Hello and welcome. Today's webinar is hosted by Rob Pocock. My name is Michelle. Rob works as our technology director at Red Helix. He selects the technology that underpins our services and continually evaluates technological innovations so that our clients benefit from the most advanced solutions. Rob has worked at Red Helix for well over 20 years, so has witnessed firsthand the threats faced by our clients and how these have evolved over the decades. So let me hand over to Rob and he will share his insight into this important topic.
Thanks, Michelle. Just so you know, as this webinar goes on, if you have any questions, you can post them in the question box, and we'll try and answer as many questions as possible at the end of the session. So cybersecurity as a service versus cybercrime as a service. We're going to start with talking about cybercrime. So we're going to start talking about the bad things and then move on to talking about the good things. So what is cybercrime as a service? It's actually quite simple. It's exactly what it says on the tin. Cybercrime as a service is services offered by criminals to other criminals to help them create cyber attacks. There's a wide range of models. The scary thing about what this allows us to do, or allows the criminals to do rather, is to attack us and with some very technical and very innovative means without really having the knowledge of how it's being done. They are literally just buying the service from expert criminals in cyber to make the attacks possible to them. And there's lots of attacks out there. I'm not going to go through all of these, don't worry. But I'll mention the ones which are probably going to affect most of us the most often. So ransomware as a service, you'll hear about this in the news most days, most weeks. This is where we all know what ransomware is, and anybody who knows who's been attacked with ransomware, they know how painful it can be. But it's actually quite a complex thing to do, unless you use ransomware as a service, and then literally you can buy from the dark web the expertise, the services, the techniques, the software, everything needed to do to create ransomware and get it into your target, extract the data, and then send out the ransom message. Okay, so this is the scary thing out there, that it's very, very easy for non-cyber criminals, but just criminals, to start picking up these techniques. Access as a service is one which we're seeing more and more often now, where literally this is the harvesting of credentials, finding out your email credentials or your passwords, your VPN password, etc., and then selling those on to sort of higher level criminals. What a lot of people don't understand in the cyber criminal space is it's not just a bunch of hackers doing everything from start to finish. It's a very tiered, sort of layered environment where you've got low level criminals literally just opening doors, just pushing on windows, pushing on doors to see what they can get in. They don't know why they're doing it. They don't really have anything against the company they're doing it against. They're literally getting that first level of access and then selling that information onto the next layer, and then the next layer and the next layer. So when you start doing the root cause analysis of these attacks, you'll find you're going through sometimes 3, 4, 5 different layers of criminal gangs and criminal entities, which all put together is the attack. Okay. Other note, phishing as a service, scam as a service, vishing, which is the same as phishing, but in the voice world rather than the email world, and then botnets for hire. So if you want to connect to a denial of service attack against somebody, you can hire in 10,000, 100,000 botnets to do that attack for you, all very, very simply. And we can't move for news articles about this. And say that the scary thing is when you start looking at some of these attacks in more details. One of these, we were seeing that the cyber criminals were paying the service providers, or the cybercrime as a service providers, as little as £300 a month to use their services. So that makes it instantly accessible. The barrier to entry, I guess, for these criminals to start using these services, it makes it incredibly low. So what is also very interesting is when you start looking at those services and doing some investigations of those services, they're run as a proper business. You have SLAs, you have contacts in place, you have a 24-hour help desk service. So if your ransomware as a service isn't working how you expect it to work, you can phone their help desk and they will give you technical support. It's that professional these days. It's getting just like a proper business. And it's also very hard to stop these as well, because it's so easy to start and stop these services and move on. That the criminals who are putting these services together, they can hide in the dark web incredibly easily. And if they think they're about to get caught, they just move on to the next space, and they just shut everything down and start again in a week's time somewhere else. So trying to stop these services as well is very, very difficult. So this gets onto a favorite topic of mine called broken windows. And this isn't a dig at Microsoft, honestly. It's a well-known theory called the broken windows theory. It's well known in sort of criminology studies. And in essence, in simple terms, it basically said if your building, if your environment doesn't look very well maintained, it's not loved, it's not looked after, there's a single broken window, which never gets replaced, then over time, more and more windows will get broken, and eventually all your windows are broken. So we've seen this in wherever we live, every part of the world we live in, that there's always areas that look run down. And then it's no surprise that those rundown areas, that's where the criminals hang out. That's where the drug dealers and the car dealers and all those people are hanging out, because they feel safe in those environments, because they can tell it's not a looked after environment. So I guess the question here is, what does me talking about broken windows in an old warehouse have to do with cybersecurity? Well, the same thing applies. If the sort of your digital appearance from the outside looks unloved, unmaintained, unmonitored, then what you'll find is you're inviting those cyber criminals to come enough along and sort of just poke at the door, poke at your firewall, see what they can see if they can get in. Okay, and as I said earlier, this isn't the high-end, top-end cyber criminals doing this. Yeah, this is sometimes literally kids in bedrooms, just literally going around the internet trying to find holes in anybody's firewall, anybody's address space, and then selling that information on to the next bidder. So what I say to a lot of customers is, just like we would in the physical world, if your building, if your office block, had broken windows and the car park was all covered in weeds, and the security barrier was never put down, etc. Yeah, you're inviting the criminals in to come and have a look. The same thing happens in your digital space. So some very, very simple IT hygiene or cyber hygiene to basically make yourself look unattractive to the cyber criminals is sometimes all what's needed to make them move on and look somewhere else. Okay, I'm not saying this is the only thing you should be doing, but it's a very, very good start. So we have this concept at Red Helix saying, do the simple well. Okay, and when we're talking about cybersecurity, it's all about risk. Okay, just as in the digital world as in the physical world, you look at your environment in your building, you look at the locks on your doors, yeah, and you decide that lock I brought for, I don't know, £200, whatever is good enough for the environment. The risk reward of spending that money is appropriate. You wouldn't put 27-foot security fences, and a moat around your office block, because that would be overkill. And the same thing happens in cybersecurity. Every decision you make, has to be appropriate to your business risk. So you don't need a headcount of 100. You don't need a SOC team of thousands or a budget of millions to protect your network and your environment. There's some very simple things you can do. And say you just look at that risk reward sort of appropriateness of any IT spend or budget spend in cybersecurity to make sure it's appropriate to your business requirements. So some very, very simple sort of IT hygiene processes. These are not clever. They're not geniuses. These are just things that surprisingly a lot of customers we go and see, sometimes these things are just forgotten or deemed to be too difficult to be important or too difficult to do on a daily basis. So we'll start with some very, very simple things, and I apologize if I'm sort of teaching Granny to suck eggs here, but I think it's worth mentioning. So keep up to date with updates, both your PC and your mobile. We all know, particularly on our phones, you get the message saying, oh, Apple or Android have released a new software update. Your phone's not at 50%, so you can't install it yet. So when you go home tonight, you think, oh, I must put it on charge and I must remember that update. You never do, you forget, something else comes along. Same with Windows. You've got to do a Windows update, but you're in the middle of doing a PowerPoint presentation for the next board meeting or whatever. And you think, I'll do it later, I'll put it off, I'll do it later, and then you forget. And all of those updates, a large percentage of the updates you'll see on a daily, weekly basis are security updates. They're known vulnerable or discovered vulnerabilities, and we have patches for them. And you'll be amazed at the number of instances we see in the environment where if someone had just done the patching, patched the known vulnerabilities, then the initial hacker wouldn't have got in, and we'd be having a very different story. So please keep up to date with all of your vulnerability patching updates to make sure your business is safe. Number 2, can't believe we're still talking about this, but get a good password policy. Passwords have been around for years. They're not getting any simpler. They're not getting any shorter. They're getting more complex. We now have to have at least 10 digits, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters. And we keep being told, don't use the same password multiple times across multiple accounts. So we have this horrible sort of juxtaposition of I've got complex passwords, I've got loads of them. Last time I counted, I'm up to about 100 passwords. So how do we keep them secure without them all being the same, without me writing them down? Well, use technology. There's password vaults, there's free password vaults, there's enterprise quality password vaults. And this is the best way to get a good password policy. Just insist that yourself and all your users in your network or your colleagues, use a password vault, because that will protect you. Okay?
If I can just interrupt there, Rob, I think it's such a good point, and it sounds so obvious, but when you sort of look into the cybersecurity news and the breaches that get reported on, so often it's a case of the passwords were found from this, and then they were just tried against various other sources, and that's how people get in. And it sounds so simple, but like you say, when you've got hundreds of passwords to remember, that's not simple, but using technology to help you is so important.
Exactly, and it's not expensive. There's free versions out there. There's enterprise versions out there. And it's a very, very cost-effective method of just improving your security posture overnight. Use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. There is so much evidence out there at the moment of some of these low-level criminals or cyber criminals are just harvesting credentials. We talked about it earlier, that sort of first level of access to sell on to the next level. If your only protection is the username and password on your VPN or whatever, it's so easy for that to get breached, for that information to be either accidentally given away or stolen. And at that point, they've got, in some cases, the keys to the castle. So Microsoft, Google, Duo, there's loads of MFA and 2FA product systems out there. Again, some are free of charge, some are sort of low-cost monthly subscriptions for enterprise level customers. Please use them. And then we sort of get on to some more sort of simple stuff, I guess. Back up your files. Okay. We talked about ransomware earlier as one of probably the main sort of service cyber criminals are now using ransomware as a service. Your backup is your lifeline. Okay. Now, assuming your backup hasn't been compromised by the ransomware at the same time, then that's the way you get your business back up and running. And again, when you look at that sort of risk and reward and that appropriateness to your business. Some companies we know they're happy to do weekly backups, because the worst case scenario they lose a week's worth of business of data. If they roll back to last week's data, and that's okay for them. Some other organisations they're doing daily or even hourly backups. It just depends on your business appetite for that risk. And again, I know some organisations who are literally doing that manually, and that's fine as long as you remember to do it manually. And you do it on your weekly, daily basis, whatever, then absolutely fine. But again, there's technologies out there to do your backups, to encrypt your backups and everything else, and make sure your backups aren't compromised by the ransomware. So however you do it, make sure you're doing your backups. And then these last 3 points are kind of my bugbears of when I speak to customers, because they're completely free of charge, doesn't take any technology, really simple to do, but people don't do it. So simple things like, locking your PC when not in front of it. You're in the office, your PC is the gateway through to the rest of your network. And if you're leaving your laptop unlocked, then insider threats is massive in the enterprise space. That could be disgruntled employees. It could be your cleaners. It could be the maintenance man coming in to do the cleaning or watering the plants, whatever. Okay, if they've got access to your laptops and you've left it unlocked, you don't know what they're doing and where they're doing, what they're installing, and it can take seconds for them to plug in a fake mouse or whatever to do keyboard login or whatever. Okay, so lock your PC when you're not in front of it. And then these last 2 things, more about information than security. But something I've seen over the years is we get asked and we ask for our customers and our colleagues for more and more bits of information. And quite often when you look at it, in a year's time, you look at the information like, why did we even ask that? It's completely irrelevant to our business, has no use to my business needs, but actually could be seen as a security threat. Not to mention the rules about GDPR and everything else. So I always say to our customers is think about what you're asking for. Only save it if it's relevant, because if it's not relevant and you're saving it, is that a possible vulnerability later on? Okay, and likewise, as well as in the physical world, only print what you need and then shred it. I'm of an age where I find it much easier to read a spreadsheet or read a document or a Word document on paper than I can on the screen. So I print everything out, but then I make sure that I do shred it before I put it in the waste paper bin, because again, you just don't know who in your organization or who outside your organization, outside your building, is looking at your waste and looking at what you're printing. So some very, very simple sort of IT hygienes, which are really simple, and I'm guessing that for most people on this call, you're going, I know that, I know that, I know that. But are you really pushing a good password policy? Are you really keeping up to with all your updates, etc.? So it's just a sort of a sanity check, really. And then you can get on to well, what else can I do? There are lots of websites out there. This one from NCSC to do some very simple check-in of your network and your infrastructure and your email systems. Now, have I got the right settings on my email for DMARC protection? We have these protocols in place, we have these processes in place, but if we don't enable them, we don't use them, they're pointless. So there's various websites. I say this one from NCSC is really, really good to do some really simple low-level checks, just to make sure that you're doing the basics right. Another one, what's not on there is, have I been pawned? Are there your credentials being sold on the dark web as we speak? Okay, has your data ever been breached? Or your personal data via other companies ever been breached, and therefore is it time to make sure you change all your passwords?
And with these sites, they're fantastic, but obviously if we can see them, presumably the criminals, they can see the same information as well. Would that be right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there is no. If you look at the email one there, you put in your email domain, it will tell you if your DMARC's set up right. There's no reason to assume that the criminals won't be using the same sites and the same techniques. So, okay, they haven't got their DMARC set up correctly. I can spoof their email address. I can send emails out to their customer list, and it looks like they're coming from that customer rather than from me. So again, it's like anything. We're talking about cybercrime as a service. In a minute, we're going to talk about cybersecurity as a service. These test tools will get used by the criminals as much as they are used by us going forward. And then finally, training. Training is the bane of everybody's life. We all feel we do too much training and it gets in the way of our job, but really cybersecurity training can be incredibly simple and so important and so easy to do. and it actually improves the security of your posture like tenfold. And I think it's important for any size of company. We're not just talking about doing cyber training for, for large enterprises of, 10,000 employees or whatever. This can be down to like companies of 10, 20, 30. Cyber training is still very, very important. When you look at sources like from Deloitte and reports, 91% of all cyber attacks begin with a phishing email. Okay, so just 5-10 minutes training a month of your staff of how to detect phishing emails is brilliant. Because not only does it protect your company, but it protects your staff. They take that knowledge and that information back home with them. They may be able to like sort of train their partners and their kids, etc. what they should be doing. Don't click on every link, etc. If it says you've won a holiday to Barbados to a raffle you never entered, you probably didn't. Sorry to disappoint anybody. So it's just some simple training, and say, don't think of cyber training as as a 6-hour online training course you've got to go through every month. It can be 5-10 minutes here and there over the year, over a period of a year, just to nudge your staff into having a better security posture. So we've talked about the bad things of cybercrime as a service. Let's turn that round. After you've done that sort of that low-level IT hygiene, I think the 7 points we talked about, where do you go next? And it doesn't really matter if you're a large organization or a small organization. There's things you want to do, and there'll be 2 reasons why you don't do them. Okay, one is you haven't got the staff or the resources to do it, and the other one is you haven't got the cost or the budget to do it. Now we understand this. We've been in existence for 40 years, and we've had some massive customers with big budgets, and they like to buy all the kit and buy the technology. And even then, they sometimes say, I've got the kit, but I haven't got the skills or the resources to run them. So that's where we can come in and offer managed services. And we take those same managed services, regardless of the size of the company, be it massive enterprises or small to medium-sized businesses, and use the same expertise and the same sort of top-tier security tools to protect your networks. And that includes managed services, threat intelligence, penetration testing, instant response. All of those things we can do for you without you having that massive upfront cost of both investment, for the infrastructure and all the skills training of your personnel. And we find this incredibly useful because cybersecurity isn't just buy something, plug it in, and hey, I'm protected. It's a journey. I hate that word, but it is a journey. And what we do is regardless of the size of the organization we're dealing with, if all they want is product, we can recommend the best products for them and help them with the initial installation, or we can run 24/7 the full service for them if you're a smaller organization. We look at cybersecurity as a service in a slightly different way to a lot of other organizations. We like to make things simple. So what we say is there's actually 3 things to look at. That there's end devices or end users. This is your laptops, your phones, your servers, etc. The endpoints, in essence. There's the network, which basically sticks or strings all those things together. And then outside of your physical environment, you've got cloud and you've got your applications, which is your software and your databases running in AWS or whatever. Okay, and we look at different ways of protecting those. So if you look at your end users or the end devices perspective, we look at EDR. If you look at your networks, we look at network detection and response tools to see how they're configured and if there's any alerts they're giving us which indicates an indicator compromise. And likewise, the same sort of techniques out in the cloud and applications to making sure they're secure. So we see these as 3 tiers, and it's not a sort of a one slide fits all. What we find is most organizations they want sort of like a simple wrapper. We call it MDR, where you've got your endpoint detection, you've got your network detection. We stick that all together in a seam, which does all your correlations and your priority of the events, and then we can give those events to to you as an organization to say, we've detected this is what we think is wrong, this is why it's important, this is what you should do to fix it. Okay, and what that means is, you're minimizing your upfront costs. We can start that service extremely cost effectively for based on the number of users in your environment, so we can scale. So if you're a 50 user company, the price is a lot less than if you're a 50,000 user company or 5,000 user company. But what it does, it provides the skill set and the intelligence to give you the actionable insights. This is what we discovered. Yeah, this is why it's bad. This is how you should fix it. Okay, and what that does mean for the large organizations, where you do have a security team, yeah, it actually frees your team up to do the bits of work they want to do. You can sort of allow us to do that 24/7 monitoring and the log ingest and what I kind of call the grunt work. And then when we discover something has happened or an alert's gone off, we can then pass that onto your security teams to do what I call the fun bit, which is the remediation, sorry, and the mitigation and the root cause analysis.
So Rob, can I just ask a couple of questions on that? Because it feels like, we've got the basic cyber hygiene and then suddenly it ramps up and it sounds quite technical. I'm assuming, that's why you would want to package it as a service, because
exactly. You're right that there is a step change between those IT sort of easier, early or quick sort of security wins, which aren't difficult to implement. It's just time and effort. To sort of the next level of security, there is a big step change, and quite often that's the hurdle a lot of organizations don't manage to overcome, because there is a budget need, there is a skills need. So by going to a managed service provider for security, it means that hurdle disappears. As I said, we can price the model and the demands for the service based on the company size, based on the bits you want. You might have an EDR in place already, so we can integrate your existing EDR into our SIEM technology, into our NDR technology. So we can tailor all of our services to meet the need, without the massive cost or the resources needed to take that step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying, so there are the 3 parts that you need to look after, and there are separate tools for each part, but as long as you cover each of them, whether that's you doing some of it or a service provider doing some of it, ultimately you need all of the 3 things covered, and if you layer them together, then you can take that security up a notch. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's just to get to that next level, and say that's when we look at particularly the sort of SME market, the mid market. That's the first hurdle they really hit. They go to the board and say, I need all these security tools, and I need another 20 staff to run them. And the board, who is, it's a board making, I always use biscuits, I don't know why, but the board is interested in biscuit recipes and biscuit manufacture. They're not particularly interested in cybersecurity tools. And it's just a cost. But by offering it as a service, you'll say, actually, it's not X number of £1,000 to do this. It's this much per month, which is a lot more sort of palatable, so I guess, to those type of boards where you can say, this is the risk. The business risk is if we get attacked, we lose our intellectual property on our latest biscuit, or our manufacturing plants get shut down and we can't produce biscuits. Okay, they understand that risk, and they can say, actually, if we're not making biscuits, that's costing us X £1,000 a minute. Okay? To counteract that risk with a small cost per month makes sense to them. So again, it's trying to get the board in this case to understand that balance, and that's where we can help.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So we've talked about 2 types of services: the criminal services, the cybercrime as a service, and then the professional services from cybersecurity as a service. And what's very striking is if you put the 2 next to each other, they're very, very similar. Okay, you can buy cybercrime as a low monthly cost subscription. We talked about £300 to buy an attack earlier, and likewise, cybersecurity as a service, can be a few £100s a month as a service, depending on what you want. Okay, both are provided by third parties, either a criminal third party for the attacks, or for a professional third party for the security as a service. They both now have round-the-clock technical support, which scares the hell out of me. I can buy a cyber attack, and then I can phone up a help desk and say it's not working. What should I do? So exactly the same as the cybersecurity service. You can call us and say I've got this problem. Help. Okay, and they both rely on the technical knowledge of others. So in the case of cybersecurity, you're relying on our knowledge, and you're using our knowledge from say 40 years of being in the business. And likewise in the crime space, this is a criminal gang. They could be anything. They know nothing about cybercrime, but they can just use that technical knowledge from other hackers. And likewise, when you look at the sort of like for likes between the two, what's the criminal service trying to do? They're trying to exploit your vulnerabilities. What's a cybersecurity professional trying to do? They're trying to protect you against those vulnerabilities. One's trying to exploit your data, one's trying to prevent it. One's looking at your brand reputation, one's trying to destroy your brand reputation. And they're both purchased in very similar ways. One's over the dark web, please don't go there. And one's through licensed and recognized companies such as Red Helix. So I guess that brings me on to questions. Michelle, has there been any questions come in so far?
Yeah, we've had a couple. Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Rob, because you've made something that sounds actually really quite frightening to begin with sound a little bit more manageable. So thank you for that, Rob. But yes, we've got a couple of questions on the panel here. So I've got one here about how might advancements in AI and machine learning influence the cybercrime as a service threat? So I'm assuming
I'm doing so well. We hadn't mentioned AI in the presentation. So like fundamentally, AI is not bad. Let's sort of get that out there, to start with. It's who uses the AI makes it good or bad. Okay. Undoubtedly, cyber criminals are using AI more and more. It used to be, if you looked at cyber training from 10 years ago, we said it's really easy to recognize a spam or a phishing email. Okay, now you look for bad spellings, bad grammar, the logo looked wrong and everything else, and the typeface was all wrong. Yeah, undoubtedly, those techniques are no longer that valid because the cyber criminals are using ChatGPT or whatever to craft the email better, so it looks more professional. It's the right language, it's the right grammar. There's no spelling mistakes. So AI is undoubtedly being used. They're creating better deep fakes, better voice calls. So if using phishing and you're faking your boss ringing you up and telling you to move money from one account to another, undoubtedly AI is being used in that space. But also the flip side is we're using AI in the majority of our cyber tools these days. So we're looking for patterns. And AI is very good at doing that. So AI is here to stay. It's going to get used by the criminals. It's going to get used by the security professionals. So it's an arms race. Whatever day you talk about it, one's going to be ahead of the other. But fundamentally, AI is going to get used for both good and bad.
Okay, thanks, Rob. There's another one here, and it says, I clearly haven't moved enough. No, the question is, I get that cybersecurity as a service is available as a subscription, but how much might it cost? I guess on average.
The $1,000 question, or maybe it's a $1,000 question. It varies. Okay, as I said earlier, we can tailor our services to what you need and what you can afford. I said at the very beginning of this presentation that your budget spend on cybersecurity has to be appropriate to your business needs and your business risk. So it really, really does depend. If all you want all you need is a 12-month sort of cybersecurity training program for your staff, then that can be done extremely cheaply as a monthly cost per user. And you can bolt on or build that service up as you require. So it scales tremendously well from very, very small organizations to very, very large organizations. And as your security posture changes, as the size of your business changes, we can adapt the service around your requirements.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Another one here. It's the last one at the minute. Is I'm only a small business with 20 staff. Am I really a target?
Yes. Well, yes, you are. And I'll explain why. So I mentioned earlier this sort of like initial access brokers of say sometimes kids in bedrooms the other side of the world just poking at your firewall. They don't know who you are, they don't know what you are, they don't know the size of your business, they don't know or they don't care. If they can get into it, if they can find a vulnerability, find a hole in your firewall, they will just put that information onto a database and sell it to the next layer. Okay. And of course, it depends on what your business is. You might be a small family-run business, but you might be in the supply chain of a much larger organization. And if that's the case, we've seen it over the years that quite often the cyber criminals who are actually sort of targeting those large organizations use the supply chain as their way in because they see that as the weak link. You might say that this massive sort of multinational global conglomerate, they've got pretty good security, but if their network is connected through different layers of size of supply chain down to yourself, and say you're a small family business, you might just be the way in, or the way they try to get into that large organization. So again, it just depends. My answer to that is yes, everybody is vulnerable, because 9 out of 10 those initial brokers of cybercrime, they don't even know who you are, what you are, or what you're doing. They don't care.
Such a shame. Okay, thank you, Rob. I don't see any more questions at the minute, but we have been making a recording as we've been talking. So what I will do is I will email that recording out, and then everyone will definitely have my email. So if you think of anything that you wish you had asked Rob, then you can simply pop me a question across by email. As I say, you'll have my address. Just send it over and I will get Rob to answer your question and come straight back to you with as much help as we can possibly offer. So I think really all that's left for me to say is thank you very much, Rob, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Been a pleasure.
Thanks.